Right, so for our week 4, and actually this should say CSS and HTML because we're going to cover both, so I'll update that. And here's what you want to do. Create a new folder in your public, W4, copy the ending code from W2, right, and then update the title. Now when we say title, right, hopefully you know where that's at. It's up in the head section of the HTML. Then commit with W4 setup. So there's two major changes you're doing in the HTML: semantic tags, tables, and forms. Okay, and I'm pretty specific here about what I want you to do is update it to use the semantic tags we've learned in the HTML week 3. You know, like footer, header, also other ways to main was in there as well. But the key you want to do here is he showed the outlining extension, and I've talked about that, right? So here's like if I was to go here. So when you create your page, you don't want any untitled. So he showed how to had divs and different techniques to make sure these are not, because untitled basically just means the screen reader is not going to be able to do a good job of understanding it. So that's what I say here. Use some kind of tool. Okay, now so you'll have to add whatever semantic tags will display when you're looking at your outliner. Or again, I've given you a link here, but you can use the extension. Make sure there's no untitled, and then create an image, right? So like when you're doing something like here, right, I could take a print screen, right? Or I could on my Mac, and hopefully you know, right? I could take a print screen of this. Now, what's nice about this, and Windows has a similar thing called the snipping tool, is you can make it relatively small. And you do want that image relatively small. You don't want it large. Because what I want you to do is resize it, right, and find a fun way to include it on each page, right? So you're going to go through on all your pages. I should have said that here. I'll update that. Right? And then implement. You need to implement most of the semantic tags we've covered. They are just good to know how to implement them. Okay, so do that. Do tables. Find or write content for 2 places in your pages that you would implement tables, right? So have fun with this one too, right? Style them with fun colors and layouts. And we learned a lot about tables, so this one should be fun. And then create at least one form, right, on one of your pages. You know, with at least 5 in this case, you could definitely use more of the different inputs we covered and the different ways to style the HTML, or sorry, the form inputs. And then use that HTTP bin on the form action so that you can see what your form actually outputs. Okay, and in this case, include a section where you discuss your understanding of that, right? So on whatever page you include the form, then you want to do that. And so here you commit with semantic tags, right? So when you get, now again, you're committing this along the way. You'll definitely be iterating and going back through, and it's okay to use whatever commits, right? Once you just get through this initial draft, because that's part of doing this kind of work as you iterate. Okay, so now on the CSS. So that fun site cooler, I want you to come up with your color palette for your site. Okay, and then create a new page. Now, when you're creating new pages here, what you want to do is have it have a navigation, right? You want it to be similar in that sense. So take one of your existing pages and maybe take out all the content except nav, so the nav is still there, right? But you're going to create a new HTML called colors, right? And then you'll update your index somewhere to include this. You can figure out where you want to do that. But in there, use the box model, right, to create boxes to show us your colors. You can play with this, have fun with, you know, but you can create, in this case, you know, we've seen different types of markups, and then you can use your CSS to create widths so that you have code for that, right? Okay, so then using most of what we learned in our CSS code along so far, implement and using your color palette now, go through and use fonts, vertical height, vertical width, classes, margins, paddings, right? So have fun, implement this, and really, it's not that it has to look, and this is where it can be sometimes hard for students because they're like, wow, my site doesn't look as good as somebody else's. Part of what you're doing here is just learning how to implement some of these things. You're having fun. This is like a playground. It's like play with it, have fun with it, right? Okay, and then find, now once you find something you really feel shows how well you understand the box model, right? Take a print screen, again, modify it, right? So if I was to just drop into here, I'd go to that computed, right? And then maybe it's on the div. Well, div's not a good example. Header. Header's not, well, header's not a good example either, although there are styles on there. So this is where you would take, again, a print screen of this, right? And I would actually do it here. So if you select here, then talk about your understanding of how your CSS is implementing the box model right here. Again, from the text all the way out. And I definitely think using Dave's suggestions on what to set like the box model, right, for all the content is a good idea. So I think it just helps. Okay, so that's that one. Okay, and I'm fine. Okay, so when you're taking the box, yeah, take a print screen, modify the size. You don't want these to be big. You don't want these images to be big. And if you're not sure, right, there's a lot of, and we cover this in 82, so if you need some help, let me know. But there are a lot of free tools, both on most operating systems, like on the Mac, there's a free tool for modifying images. On Windows, there's a free tool. On the web, like if I was to do image editing online, free, right? I've used Pixlr, that's a fun one. Canva is a fun one, right? There's so many out there. What you want to do is, GIMP is actually a free program you could use. So use something so that when you're doing this work and you're modifying these images, because you don't want big images, like I wouldn't want to take a whole print screen of the page. First, take just a print screen of the part that you want. Oh, that's 2. Okay. All right, so this commit message, yeah, box model, color palette, styling, and box model. Make sure your HTML, CSS validate, provide your URL for this week. So remember, because we're into week 4, you could go back and look at week 2 and just add the / or go back into GitHub, get the URL from the public. Remember settings and then pages, and then make sure you add that week 4 onto there, right? So review, so in this case again, so 80 points comes from doing all the work, 20 points comes from your review feedback on another student's site. Remember, if somebody's already done it, then wait and, give it to somebody who hasn't had feedback yet. And remember, this is not to be critical. This is really just to say, look at their code, see how they implement it. Maybe they did something that you learned from. That's a great thing as well. So review their output, give them the thoughts on their work and what you feel they really did a great job, and where they might consider updating it. Okay, substantive replies here, and that's the breakdown of the grade. Okay, I hope you have fun with this, and I'll talk to you later.